Welcome to Philosophy Zone. Today we're stepping into the mind of one of philosophy's most electrifying figures, Friedrich Nietzsche, and exploring his very first book, Homer and Classical Philology. It stands as a window into a young Nietzsche wrestling with big questions about culture, art, and what it means to be human. So, grab a coffee, settle in, and let's unpack this together. Let's start with the man himself. Friedrich Nietzsche, even early in his career, was a bit of a firebrand. Picture a young scholar in his mid-20s, already a professor at the University of Basel, with a mind that's half poet, half philosopher, and entirely restless. In 1869, when he wrote Homer and Classical Philology, he wasn't yet the Nietzsche we know from quotes like "God is dead" or "that which does not kill us makes us stronger." This is Nietzsche before the moustache got famous, still finding his voice, but already obsessed with how the past shapes who we are. And for him, there's no better place to start than with the ancient Greeks and their epic poet Homer. So, what's this book about? Well, it's not a book in the way we think of books today. It's actually Nietzsche's inaugural lecture, a kind of academic debut he gave when he became a professor. The title, Homer and Classical Philology, sounds dry, I know, like something you'd find buried in a university library. But don't let that fool you. This lecture is Nietzsche's first swing at a big question. How do we connect with the past? Specifically, how do we understand someone like Homer, the poet behind the Iliad and the Odyssey? And what does that tell us about ourselves? Let's break it down. Classical philology, for those who don't spend their days decoding ancient Greek, is the study of ancient texts. Think of it as literary archaeology. You're digging into words, manuscripts, and fragments to figure out what they meant back then and what they mean now. Nietzsche was trained as a philologist, so he was all about getting under the skin of ancient works. But here's the thing. He wasn't content to just dust off old texts and catalogue them like some kind of intellectual librarian. For Nietzsche, philology wasn't just about facts, it was about life. He thought studying the Greeks, especially Homer, could teach us how to live boldly, creatively, and authentically. Now Homer. If you've ever read the Iliad or the Odyssey, you know this guy's stories are epic in every sense. Gods, heroes, battles, and journeys that feel larger than life. The Greeks saw Homer as almost divine, the poet who captured their spirit. But by Nietzsche's time, scholars were arguing over who Homer even was. Was he one guy, a bunch of poets? Did he write both epics? This debate, called the Homeric question, was a big deal in philology, and Nietzsche jumps right into it. But here's where he gets interesting. Nietzsche doesn't just care about whether Homer was real or not. He's asking, why does Homer matter? Why do these ancient stories still grab us? For Nietzsche, Homer represents something primal, a vision of life that's raw, passionate, and unapologetic. The Iliad is full of warriors like Achilles, who burn bright and don't shy away from their fate, even if it's tragic. The Odyssey follows Odysseus, a guy who's cunning and resilient, navigating a world of monsters and gods. Nietzsche sees in these stories a celebration of human strength, creativity, and struggle, qualities he thinks modern society is starting to lose. Let's pause for a second to think about why this resonates today. We live in a world that's all about efficiency, comfort, and playing it safe. Nietzsche, even in this early work, is pushing back against that. He's saying, look at the Greeks. They didn't hide from life's messiness. They faced it head-on through art, through stories, through heroes like Achilles and Odysseus. For Nietzsche, studying Homer isn't just about understanding the past, it's about rediscovering that fire in ourselves. Now, let's get to the heart of what Nietzsche's doing in this lecture. He's not just praising Homer, he's challenging the way his fellow scholars approach the past. Philology in Nietzsche's day was getting super technical. Think endless debates over grammar or which manuscript was older. Nietzsche thought this was missing the point. He argued that philology should be a bridge between the past and the present, not a museum for dead words. He wanted scholars to feel the pulse of the ancient world, to let it inspire them, not just dissect it like a frog in biology class. This is classic Nietzsche, by the way. Even at this early stage, he's shaking things up, saying, don't just study life, live it. He's frustrated with academics who treat ancient texts like puzzles to solve, rather than sparks to ignite something new. For him, Homer's epics aren't just stories, they're a call to action. They show us a world where people embrace their struggles, their passions, their flaws, and Nietzsche thinks we need that energy to break free from the stuffiness of modern life. Let's zoom out a bit. Why does this lecture matter in the grand scheme of Nietzsche's work? Well, Homer and classical philology is like the first sketch of ideas he'd develop later. If you know Nietzsche, you know he's all about the will to power, the idea that life is about striving, creating, overcoming. You can already see hints of that here. Homer's heroes embody that drive. They don't just survive, they shine. You can also see Nietzsche starting to wrestle with the tension between past and present, a theme he'll hammer home in later works, like Thus Spoke Zarathustra or Beyond Good and Evil. How do we honour what came before without being trapped by it? How do we create something new while standing on the shoulders of giants? There's also a personal side to this. Nietzsche was only 24 when he gave this lecture, and you can feel his ambition, his hunger to make a mark. He's not just talking about Homer, he's talking about himself too. He wants to be a bridge between the ancient world and the modern one, to bring the fire of the Greeks into a world he sees as growing cold and mechanical. It's no coincidence that a few years later he'd write The Birth of Tragedy, where he dives even deeper into Greek culture and its lessons for us. This lecture is the seed of that bigger project. Now, let's make this practical. What can we take away from Nietzsche's ideas here? First, there's the idea of engaging with the past in a living way. Whether it's Homer, Shakespeare, or even old family stories, the past isn't just history. It's a source of inspiration. It's a way to remind ourselves what humans are capable of. Second, Nietzsche's pushing us to live with intensity. The Greeks didn't play small, and neither should we. That doesn't mean we all need to be Achilles swinging a sword, but it does mean embracing our challenges, our creativity, our individuality. Think about your own life for a second. Are there moments when you feel like you're just going through the motions? Nietzsche would say, look to Homer. Look to those stories of struggle and triumph. Let them wake you up. Let them remind you to live deliberately, to create something meaningful, whether it's art, a project, or just a life that feels true to you. There's another layer here that's worth touching on. Nietzsche's lecture isn't just about Homer or philology. It's about culture. He's worried that modern society, already in the 19th century, is losing its soul. He sees a world obsessed with progress, science and rationality, but forgetting the deeper stuff: art, myth, passion. Homer, for Nietzsche, is a reminder of what we're missing. The Greeks had a culture that celebrated the human spirit in all its complexity, its beauty, its pain, its contradictions. Nietzsche wants us to rediscover that, to build a culture that's not just about getting by, but about thriving. This is where Nietzsche's ideas feel so alive today. We're surrounded by technology, data, algorithms, stuff that's amazing, but can make life feel flat sometimes. Nietzsche's saying, don't let that define you. Dive into stories, art, music, whatever lights you up. That's what makes us human. That's what Homer was doing thousands of years ago, and it's what we need to keep doing. As we wrap up, let's think about Nietzsche himself. This lecture shows a young man who's already restless, already pushing against the limits of his time. Nietzsche's fearless in asking the big questions. What makes a culture great? What makes a life worth living? In Homer and classical philology, he's not giving us all the answers, but he's pointing us in a direction. toward passion, toward creativity, toward a life that's not afraid to wrestle with the big stuff. So that's our journey through Nietzsche's first big swing at the world. I hope it's left you curious, maybe about Homer, maybe about Nietzsche, or maybe just about how the past can spark something new in your own life. If you want to dig into the text yourself, it's out there, though I'll warn you, it's dense. Better yet, pick up the Iliad or the Odyssey and feel the power of those stories for yourself. They're not just old poems. They're a reminder of what it means to be alive. Thanks for joining me in the Philosophy Zone. If you enjoyed this, share it with someone who loves big ideas or just needs a little Nietzschean fire in their life. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep living boldly. See you in the next episode.